One evening, I found myself overcome with boredom, prompting me to embark on a Google search for my own name. To be honest, I didn't expect to stumble upon anything particularly noteworthy. After all, my life hadn't been a whirlwind of excitement thus far. Predictably, my search yielded only a handful of school awards I had earned, and that was the extent of it. However, my curiosity led me down an unexpected path. I decided to broaden my search and explore my parents' digital footprints. Starting with my dad, I eagerly entered his name into the search bar. To my astonishment, the results that appeared were anything but ordinary. An abundance of images depicting a vibrant drag queen flooded the screen. I blinked in disbelief. While this individual shared the exact same name as my father, there was simply no way that it could be him. Intrigued, I clicked on the first link that caught my eye, and suddenly, my intrigue transformed into fascination. The webpage burst to life with blaring music, and before me stood 4 stunning drag queens, each exuding an extravagant, over-the-top glamour complete with long, glittering eyelashes, extravagant makeup, and a shimmering cascade of glitter. Just as I was about to dismiss the sight, a peculiar detail caught my eye. Prominently displayed on the webpage was a poster advertising an upcoming show featuring the drag queen who shared my dad's name. It was a curious coincidence, as my dad possessed a rather common name. Nevertheless, I couldn't help but burst into laughter at the absurdity of it all. You see, my dad was the epitome of a serious, no-nonsense businessman. His sense of humor was virtually non-existent, making it highly unlikely that he would find this revelation amusing. Still, the image of a drag queen with the same name as my dad continued to occupy my thoughts, leaving me thoroughly entertained and bewildered by the unexpected connection. I found myself drawn to Instagram, where I promptly searched for the intriguing figure who shared my dad's name. To my surprise, there he was, his profile displayed on my screen. What struck me as particularly strange was the uncanny resemblance he bore to my father, albeit in an unconventional way. There was an inexplicable connection, yet simultaneously, they were worlds apart. Intrigued by this newfound connection, I decided to follow him on Instagram. If only I were 21, I thought, I would have eagerly attended one of his shows. Unfortunately, I was just 18 at the time, and sneaking into the show seemed too risky. Before retiring to bed that night, I deleted my earlier Google search history, partly out of caution. My dad, as I've mentioned, was a stern and business-focused individual, and our father-daughter relationship was less than ideal. I barely saw him except for hurried Sunday lunches between his frequent business trips to various states. As I drifted into slumber, a whimsical thought danced through my mind. What if my dad possessed even a fraction of the vivacity displayed by the drag queen who shared his name? Although the notion unnerved me slightly, I couldn't help but wish that my father would loosen up and embrace a bit more of life's exuberance. The following morning, my first order of business before heading to school was checking my social media. Armed with newfound knowledge about drag queen terminology, I silently prepared to impress my friends. While I refrained from mentioning my Instagram discovery, I spent the entire day engrossed in the drag queen's videos, which never failed to elicit laughter. His voice, soaring to impressively high pitches, was undeniably a performance, but it was evident that he possessed the makings of a talented comedian. As the weeks passed, my admiration for this captivating individual continued to grow, transforming me into a dedicated fan. The upcoming weekend marked the date of this show, and I was determined to attend. The only way for me to gain entry was to be accompanied by someone over the age of 21. So I pondered my options carefully, and after much consideration, I decided to approach my cousin Will. Will was a college student, openly gay, and I suspected he might share my interest in this unique experience. I made the call, filled with anticipation, but to my disappointment, he regretfully declined, citing prior commitments. Instead, he generously offered me his roommate's ID. She happened to be 22 years old and, according to Will, bore a striking resemblance to me. He assured me that the bouncers at the venue wouldn't scrutinize it too closely. The rest of the week was consumed by nervous anticipation, but when Saturday finally arrived, I held that borrowed ID in my trembling hand, clad in a dress that lent me an appearance slightly older than my years. I approached my mom and told her I was heading to a friend's house for a movie night, assuring her I'd be back later. Fortunately, my dad was out of town, sparing me the need to offer any explanations to him. Arriving at the club, my palms were clammy with anxiety. as though the very idea of attending was threatening to slip through my grasp. I joined a line outside and did my best to exude confidence. It was surreal to think that just a few weeks earlier, I wouldn't have even considered stepping foot into a drag queen club. Yet here I stood, going to great lengths to ensure my entry into this unconventional world. Oh, how the situation had transformed. As the line gradually inched closer to the front entrance, I hurriedly applied a layer of lipstick, my heart pounding with excitement. And then, in the blink of an eye, I found myself standing right in front of the bouncer. I hardly made eye contact with him, and before I knew it, I had breezed past without my ID being checked. All that meticulous planning had seemingly been for naught. After purchasing my ticket, I passed through a grand red velvet curtain, entering the heart of the venue. Not wanting to take any risks, I opted not to buy a drink and settled into a seat, attempting to appear inconspicuous. Easier said than done when you're a minor attending your very first drag show. I wasn't entirely sure what I had expected, but to my surprise, everyone in the audience seemed quite ordinary. I suppose I had conjured up images of flamboyant drama queens populating the entire crowd. Remarkably, there were even two elderly ladies seated in the front row. I realized I didn't stand out as much as I had feared. The show took its time to commence, but once it did, I was utterly captivated. The first performer took the stage, sporting a massive curly blue wig, and from the moment he started prancing about and delivering jokes, I was instantly smitten. His charm was infectious. Before the next performer took the stage, I rushed to the restroom. Unbeknownst to me, I had mindlessly consumed the soda I had purchased from the hostess, and now I was bursting with the need to relieve myself. When I returned from the bathroom, it dawned on me that I had missed the performance of the drag queen who shared my dad's name, the very reason I had embarked on this adventure in the first place. He was already commanding the stage, adorned in a flowing blonde wig and towering high heels. Not wanting to disrupt his performance, I lingered at the back of the room, patiently waiting for the opportune moment to return to my front row seat. He was singing, and I couldn't help but break into a smile. His presence exuded an incredible energy, one that made me wish he could be my friend. Confidence radiated from him, and he appeared utterly at ease in the spotlight. Moreover, his voice was nothing short of remarkable. It held me transfixed. When his first song reached its conclusion, I seized the chance to hurry back to my front row seat. From this closer vantage point, I could scrutinize him more carefully, and that's when it hit me like a sudden blow to the chest. It was him, unmistakably so. My dad. I recognized him the moment our eyes met. His entire demeanor underwent an abrupt transformation, and he began stumbling over his words. I was paralyzed, unsure of where to direct my gaze or how to react. The urge to flee and seek some fresh air warred with my reluctance to create a scene. Somehow, he mustered the composure to continue his performance. However, as soon as he completed the song, he rushed off the stage. Murmurs rippled through the audience as I fled the venue. Thoughts of confronting him backstage crossed my mind, but I was still reeling from the shock. Never in a million years had I envisioned my dad engaging in something like this. It simply didn't add up. He was supposed to be away on one of his frequent business trips. He was always away for business, or so I had thought. And then, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. All this time B had been performing, and I had believed he was on yet another business trip. But why? He was leading a double life, as if he possessed two distinct personas, the ordinary, unassuming dad and the glamorous drag queen. I knew I had to find a way to speak with him. Sitting on the curb outside, I took a moment to gather my thoughts. Returning inside was out of the question. Did my mother have any inkling about this hidden life? How many people had he deceived? And why had he chosen to lead this double life? I resolved to call him, my fingers trembling as I dialed his number, waiting anxiously for it to connect. It rang and rang again, but he didn't answer. I tried once more, but the result remained the same, no response. It was evident that he was deliberately ignoring my calls, possibly infuriated by my audacious stunt of sneaking into the club and catching him in the midst of his performance. It was a disastrous situation, no doubt. However, beneath the embarrassment and confusion, an unexpected emotion emerged. Dare I admit it, but I felt a genuine sense of happiness. My dad, it seemed, was far more interesting and less morose than I had originally perceived. Sure, he was a drag queen, but it meant he wasn't as cold and one-dimensional as I had once believed. In fact, the more I contemplated the revelation, the more I realized that I hardly knew my own father. What drove him? How long had he been involved in drag? And the looming question, did my mother have any knowledge of this clandestine life? My mind was teeming with a torrent of unanswered questions. I knew that sooner or later, I would have to confront my dad about what I had discovered. When I got home, my mom was already asleep, so I quietly retreated to my room. My phone beeped, and I noticed it was a message from my dad. All he said was, "I'm sorry, I can explain." He didn't return home that night, or if he did, I was already fast asleep. The following morning, I heard him ascending the stairs, and I remained in bed, feeling utterly paralyzed by the situation. Embarrassment hung heavy in the air. I was certain he was feeling it too, but I desperately wanted to see him and have a conversation about everything. Summoning my courage, I finally mustered the strength to approach my bedroom door. Just as I was about to open it, my father must have been about to knock because we collided with each other in the hallway. He looked worn out, as if he hadn't slept at all, and a small speck of glitter clung to his forehead. How had I not noticed that before? He asked if we could talk, and then he began to explain everything. It turned out that he had first dabbled in drag shows during college, initially just for fun. However, he had discovered a profound love for it, prompting him to pursue it more seriously. He relished the thrill of being on stage and the element of surprise that accompanied his performances. He emphasized that being a man didn't preclude him from enjoying the artistry of glittery clothing and makeup. Throughout his explanation, he blushed profusely, offering apologies and understanding if I needed some time to process everything. I gazed at him and couldn't help but smile. "Dad, you don't have to apologize," I reassured him. "I'm just surprised. I stumbled upon that drag queen with your name when I was casually Googling you one day. But at the time, I had no inkling that it was actually you." I found him fascinating and was inexplicably drawn to his persona. There was something about him that captivated me, and now it all makes sense because he is you, or rather, you are him. We shared a hearty laugh over the revelation. He joined me, sitting down and enveloping me in the most significant hug I'd ever received from him. In the midst of our embrace, another question popped into my mind. "Dad, does Mom know about this?" I inquired. He threw his head back and let out a hearty laugh. "Of course she does, honey," he replied. "She attends many of my shows and even lends a hand with my makeup. She adores it." I was bewildered. "But doesn't that mean you're gay?" I asked. My dad shook his head, his smile unwavering. "No, sweetie, not all men who embrace the art of drag are necessarily gay." I was taken aback by this newfound perspective. The more I delved into my dad's hidden passion, the more I began to comprehend him, realizing that I had never truly made an effort to get to know him until now. In retrospect, we can share a laugh over the entire ordeal, and my dad confessed that he had been waiting for me to grow a bit older before revealing his secret, just in case I didn't approve. Well, he had nothing to worry about. I became his biggest fan. So, what do you think of my story?